Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I start by adding my congratulations to the Chancellor for being the first woman to hold that office in history of our country. At this rate, the Labour Party might even have a female Prime Minister sometime this century. And I'd also like to thank the Shadow Chancellor for everything he did while in office. And in particular, I want to thank the voters of West Worcestershire for returning me back here for the 5th time. And that I was actually one of those who were here in 2010. And it is ironic that I should be following the member for Hodge Hill, because he was the one who left that famous note that said, "I'm sorry, there is no money left." If you want to know what a bad economic legacy looks like, I was here in 2010 when we received it from the party opposite. The deficit was over 10% and rising. Unemployment was over 8%. In fact, inflation was nearly twice its target, and the banking system had just collapsed and had to be bailed out by taxpayers. If you contrast that with the economic legacy of 2024 that the new government inherits, you can see that despite the economic costs of the pandemic and of the energy crisis, that the UK is enjoying the fastest growth in the G7, that unemployment is now half the rate that it was back in 2010, and that inflation is back on target. We have a well-capitalised banking system almost completely out of taxpayers' hands, and wages are now rising faster than inflation, and we're the 4th largest exporter in the world. Don't take my words for it, Madam Deputy Speaker, take the words of the IMF, which in a recently published report said that the economy in the UK is approaching a soft landing, with growth recovering faster than expected, inflation fallen faster than envisaged, and the banking system remains healthy. And that's why I approach the economic measures in the King's Speech with a degree of trepidation, because it seems to me they come at a time when the economy was back on track. And while I agree that securing economic growth is a fundamental mission of government, I would personally add the words non-inflationary in front of that mission. And I've looked through this King's Speech, and I can't see any measures that magic up economic growth. Growth doesn't just happen because you write it into the King's Speech. In my time as chair of the Treasury Select Committee, we had the opportunity to actually have a private session with the IMF. And I think it's very interesting to observe that many of the measures that have been put forward by the government in the King's Speech are ones that were in the IMF's prescription for the UK economy. Things like reforming, planning and building on our beloved Green Belt, they were from the IMF. Strengthening the role of the Office for Budget Responsibility, they were from the IMF. Crowding in private capital on net zero projects via a national wealth fund, they're from the IMF. So what else does the IMF want? Well, colleagues may not be surprised to learn that they also want to see more taxes. They don't quite say it like that. They call it closing tax loopholes or mobilising additional revenues. Some of the ones that we heard in our private session with the IMF are as follows. Setting capital gains tax rates in line with income tax rates. I hope that the front bench will rule that one out. Subjecting the sale of your primary residence to capital gains tax. I hope the front bench will rule that one out. Ending the inheritance tax loopholes like pensions, family businesses and farms. I hope the front bench will rule that one out. Revaluing all of England's homes for council tax, especially those over £320,000 in value. I hope the front bench will rule that one out. The IMF also like the idea of road pricing. I hope the front bench will rule that one out. They want to bring forward the date at which the state pension age increases considerably. So given that these are all tax measures that the IMF recommends, I am sure they are ones that the Chancellor is beginning to contemplate. So when the government responds to today's debate, I hope they will specifically rule those things out, because, Madam Deputy Speaker, the tax rises that the government admits to already are bad enough. the pensioner tax, the tax on education, the regulatory costs galore. Let's hear some specific denials on those other taxes to when they respond to this debate.